All right, we'll just give everyone a chance to join the session. I'll just give you guys a minute or two to get settled. All right, great. We'll make a start. So first of all, welcome everyone. So glad you could join us today. We're in for a real treat with this session that's being presented by Mindful Materials. Just a quick couple of housekeeping notes, couple of introductions. My name is Wendy Carradine. I'm the operations manager for the U.S. Supply Chain Sustainability School, and I'm sort of the person that you need to contact if you're having any issues with the platform, have any questions about the platform, or have any questions about supply chains or sustainability in general. Would love to have a conversation with you. So today we're going to be running a 1 hour session. This session is being recorded, so it will be posted on the resource library to live on in perpetuity. So if anyone's curious, want to go back and have a look at the recording, you're welcome to do that. All of the slides will be distributed after the session, along with a couple of links to resources that you might find useful. Strongly recommend that you check those out. If you do have any technical issues, please reach out to me. My email is info@supplychainschool.com, and I'm happy to support you. We will try to keep questions till the end, but if you do have any burning questions, the Q&A function is available in Zoom. Feel free to type your question and we can either respond to it in real time or we'll save it until the very end. The chat is also live, so feel free to drop in any comments if you have something to add. Would love to start a conversation. I'm going to now hand it over to our presenter, Laurel Chadzynski, I hope I got that right, who is the VP of Engagement at Mindful Materials, and she's going to be taking us through the Common Materials Framework, which I'm super interested in. Can't wait to hear more about it. And I'll hand it over to Laurel. Please take it away.
Amazing. Thank you, Wendy. All right. So, as Wendy mentioned, my name is Laurel Honzinski. I am a licensed architect, sustainable design leader, and also VP of Engagement at Mindful Materials. And I'm honored to join you all today to share this CEU presentation on the Common Materials Framework, designing with healthy impacts in mind. So, with hundreds of green product certifications on the market and persistent greenwashing, it can be difficult for designers to know what kinds of impacts the materials that they select for a project are actually having on the health of our climate, ecosystems, communities, and on individuals. But with the introduction of an industry-aligned framework for evaluating sustainable materials, more informed decision-making is finally within reach. This course will present the current challenges to measuring holistic product impacts and present the Common Materials Framework, an emerging common language for product sustainability, and how to apply it in your practice today. So I won't read all of this text for you, but just simply highlight that after today's session, you will be equipped with strategies to address fragmentation in reporting, a framework to help you look beyond just certifications to make more informed materials decisions. You'll leave with the ability to contribute your voice to a growing demand for holistically sustainable materials and a variety of different workflow tools that you can use to integrate the CMF or Common Materials Framework into your daily practice and scale our collective impact for a healthier, more regenerative future. So if we were in the room together, I'd be passing the mic to all of you now, but since we're here together on Zoom and we do have the chat feature, I'd love to ask if you could just humor me by using that chat box there to share your role in the built environment and where you're located, if you don't mind, just so I can get a sense of our audience. There's a couple questions here that I have for you as well. I'd love to know, and obviously this may vary a bit depending on your role in the built environment, but I'd love to hear from you all what kind of impacts do you consider when you're selecting materials? And I want to probe you to respond a little bit more than just durability and price. I know those are, some of the top considerations. But what are the other impacts you're looking at? Embodied carbon is one that I hear quite often. And then if you have spent time vetting materials, I see we've got some architects, product development. So from a product development side, what kind of, impacts are you considering maybe trying to optimize for? Um, And if you have spent time either trying to optimize the products you're developing or, find an optimized product for a specific application, I'd love to hear kind of what barriers you have encountered. Thanks to all those who are dropping input in the chat here. I can say from my role on the practicing architect side, definitely outdated certifications, spending a lot of time digging through manufacturers' websites to find an EPD that expired 2 years ago is not a new experience for me. So that's one of the challenges for sure. And just having different information all in all sorts of different places is one that I hear a lot as well. Multiple messages from clients can be very confusing. We're going to talk about that a bit more as well. I see some notes about the AI and materials pledge. That's wonderful. Lack of transparency is huge, and that gets to the advocacy part of the conversation that we'll have today. Comparison between certifications, that's a huge question, huge barrier for folks too. All right. Feel free to keep dropping in comments in the chat here. I'm going to keep going. So if we were to take a step back and think very big picture, we're all here in this profession today in the building industry because shelter is an essential human need if we really get down to the bottom of it. And in the past, I would say that as humans, we've kind of considered Earth's resources to be endless. We've almost assumed the planet could just take whatever we threw at it. We could just mindlessly build whatever we wanted. And we've often thought of our impacts really within the footprint or the walls of the structures that we're designing. But more recently, we've started to recognize that the resources we use to make materials, to make buildings, are finite. And what we put into the atmosphere stays there, or equally as terrible in our bodies, in our communities. And this disconnect, what we kind of call mindless materials, has some pretty big consequences. The built environment has an overwhelming impact on our climate, our ecosystems, and our most vulnerable populations. And while efficient building systems, siting of structures all matter, a huge portion of the impact of the built environment comes down to the materials that are used to create it. Thinking about carbon emissions, slavery in supply chains, toxic material exposure, inequities in who is exposed to the greatest of these impacts. It's typically not the occupants. So how do we as an industry and as individuals working within this industry move from making mindless decisions to really realizing the scale of our impacts and being more mindful? That's what we're here to discuss today. So you might think, well, we just look to product certifications to let us know that, a product is aligned with our values. Well, did you know that there are over 600 sustainability certifications used in the market today to evaluate both products and buildings? And most design firms don't have a materials expert on staff to know how to interpret these or how one certification compares to another. That was an example that was given in the chat. And so in this complex landscape of certifications, verifications, testing, reporting options for both products and materials, as well as buildings themselves, I would say there are as many definitions of sustainability out there as there are products to choose from. So which tools like certifications and standards do you turn to? And what do they tell you about the materials? Many stakeholders, like those you see here, manufacturers, owners, architects, designers, contractors, all folks throughout the building industry, we want to see advancement in sustainable products, and in most cases, we're working independently toward that goal within our own individual or organizational roles, and using different metrics, evaluation criteria, and reporting platforms to do that. And so thanks to increasing industry awareness of the wide-ranging impacts of materials, I saw AIA Materials Pledge mentioned, that the pursuit of green building rating systems like LEED, WELL, or Living Building Challenge, we see a lot of folks asking for different things from manufacturers, and manufacturers are spending a significant amount of time manually responding directly to requests for transparency data from multiple different sources. And these requests, these redundant requests, cost manufacturers and design firms a significant amount of time and money. And without seeing a clear ROI for sustainability, many manufacturers may not feel a need to continue to invest in product transparency or work towards optimization. And Mindful Materials' role is to bring together all of these groups, tools, and standards to amplify the work they're doing and translate it to the broader industry so we can make the selection of sustainable materials more accessible for everyone. We're really today I'm presenting this in May 2025. We're really at a crucial turning point in this work today. We're seeing more and more action and commitments to sustainable practices every day. And while it's wonderful to continue to see this ongoing adoption of the AIA Materials Pledge, for instance, um, not to mention other sector-specific pledges that align with the same impact areas. The more action we see, no matter how well intended, without alignment is just going to continue to amplify the confusion in the market. So how do we get aligned so we can build the momentum we need to transform the market to one where sustainable materials are the norm and not an option? First, by reporting and receiving product sustainability data in a consistently structured way, everybody in the value chain can save time and money on coordination and management of this sustainability data, and it will be easier to access and interpret it. Beyond that, an even greater alignment can be realized by developing consistency in essentially what we're asking for, the asks of building owners and design firms across the board. If a majority of owners and designers are all asking for the same thing in the same way, it really starts to send a loud, clear market signal, which makes it much easier for the market to respond. So what does this consistent structure and common ask look like? Let me introduce you to the Common Materials Framework. The CMF, for short, was developed by Mindful Materials Content Advisory Board. So this was a group made up of subject matter experts from the AIA's Materials Knowledge Working Group and other industry leaders and organizations that you see pictured here. The framework was then reviewed by a cross-sector content working group and ecosystem partners, including many certifying bodies and tech partners that you might be familiar with. At its highest level, the framework outlines 5 areas of impact which are directly aligned with the impact areas identified in the AIA Materials Pledge: human health, climate health, ecosystem health, social health and equity, and circular economy. So I mentioned earlier there were over 600 building and product certifications on the market. The CMF takes over 100 of those, namely those that are commonly referenced in North America as far as today, and gives structure to all the specific factors and data points within them that must be achieved or reported on in order for a product to carry that label. So ultimately, it pulls together over 650 discrete data points or factors and thousands of different possible answers to those factors. And so sorting them or filtering them to the Common Materials Framework allows us to start to see how and where these certifications and the criteria that products must meet to obtain them align with these high-level impacts. So we don't have to now be experts on all the different certifications out there and how they compare. We need to just focus on what impacts we want to prioritize for a product or project. So I don't think I'm alone in saying, certainly for the other designers on the call, I want to feel like my design decisions and the materials that I'm selecting are having a positive impact. But it can feel really overwhelming and hard to know where to start, especially knowing the sheer volume of certifications that are out there. So I was introduced to this topic probably 7 or so years ago through Mindful Materials, actually, and when I first learned about Mindful Materials, and then dove into learning more about material health impacts through Parsons Healthy Materials Lab. They have a self-paced online course that I highly recommend for everyone. You'll see a lot of resources that they also host related to each of these impact areas, but I want to just give a bit of a high-level overview of when we talk about human health, climate health, etc. What do we mean when we say that materials have these types of impacts? I would venture to guess that almost everyone on this call and watching the recording has been touched in some way by health effects that are related to environmental factors. This could be anything from thyroid issues, multiple chemical sensitivity, respiratory complications like asthma, infertility, reproductive health problems. The list goes on and on. When we talk about human health impacts, we want to know that the chemicals used in building materials are safe for humans throughout the product's life cycle. So some great resources to check out in this area are the 6 classes videos from Green Science Policy Institute, or GSPI. When we share this presentation, all of these are linked in the PDF, so you'll be able to click them. But if you Google 6 classes or GSPI 6 classes, they have a great set of short videos that explain what are these classes of chemicals, PFAS, antimicrobials, flame retardants, bisphenols and phthalates, and some solvents and metals. And they break down what do these chemical classes, what are the impacts they have, what are they used for, where might you commonly find them, and how to avoid. And there are also a whole host of banned lists or watch lists, from ILFI's red list to Cradle to Cradle's restricted substances list, Perkins and Will's precautionary list, and more. And so the newest version of HPDs, or health product declarations, are a type of transparency document that actually will pre-screen to identify if a product contains any chemicals that are on any of those lists. And then before you even get into selecting a specific product, you can check out the Informed tool from Habitable, formerly Healthy Building Network. This tool gives you a great sense of just general material types to consider and which to avoid, using a simple red, yellow, green traffic light system that kind of codes material types more broadly. When we talk about climate health, the term you hear most frequently to address these types of impacts is embodied carbon. So this is what's considered like the upfront carbon, all the energy and emissions that were required to extract, refine, manufacture, assemble, transport that material to the job site. So to understand the climate impacts, as well as some other ecosystem impacts of a product, you want to look for data that's found within LCAs, or life cycle assessments. And those are typically represented in the form of an EPD, or an environmental product declaration. So using the EC3 tool, the embodied carbon and construction calculator, which is made available to the industry through Building Transparency, is a great way that you can find products with EPDs and compare them to one another based on the specific location, the specific product that you're sourcing. And understanding, in that case, the GWP, or global warming potential of a material, and how that compares to an industry baseline for certain product categories, can help you select materials with a lower carbon footprint. So again, looking at the EC3 tool to find and compare products, and then leveraging the Carbon Leadership Forum, or CLF's material baselines report that they put out every couple years to see where is the current baseline for materials in certain product categories where those have been established. Then we have ecosystem health, which addresses material impacts like biodiversity loss, air and water pollution, soil degradation, habitat destruction. There are a few certifications out there that address this, generally as a part of a multi-attribute approach like Cradle to Cradle or Living Product Challenge. There's also a new initiative that has launched recently in the industry related to adoption of bio-based materials, really looking at products and materials that have regenerative effects on local communities and ecosystems. So if you're interested to learn more about that, you can check out the Bio-Based Materials Collective. A lot of the materials that fall under this category are in more of the emerging kind of R&D stage, but it's really exciting to see all of the different products that are starting to come out that are really bio-based and manufactured locally and regionally. So Cradle to Cradle and Living Product Challenge are 2 other certifications you can look to here that will speak to how a product is addressing ecosystem health. As well as FSC for wood, that's another kind of maybe more obvious one. So, social health and equity impacts consider how the lives and livelihoods of people throughout the material supply chain are affected. And one of the leading organizations in this area is called Design for Freedom. Their mission is to eradicate forced and child labor in the building materials supply chain. While there are plenty of national and international laws and conventions surrounding this topic, there is inadequate enforcement. I would say that's probably an understatement. And there are over 50 million people living in modern slavery today. So this was a bit of a jarring statistic when I first heard it. And Design for Freedom has put together some extensive resources and toolkits that you can download for free from their website that include supplier outreach templates, tracking schedules, all sorts of different things to kind of help you pinpoint what materials on your project might be at the highest risk for forced labor and what are some things that you can do to reduce your risk and select materials that are much less likely to have that in their supply chain or value chain. So the Home Free Product Guide or Informed Product Guide starts to incorporate some of the social health and equity considerations, but also again, looking at Design for Freedom's toolkit is a great resource here to learn more. And then last but not least in our review of the 5 impact areas is circularity or circular economy. So by and large, we live in a very linear economy today, with materials being extracted, manufactured, used, and then disposed of in landfills or perhaps incinerated to recapture energy in a waste to energy system. Our industry is responsible for a massive amount of waste generation. And in order to change that, we need to take a really critical look at the end of life of the materials we use. So not only considering products and materials that are incorporating recycled content, but designing for deconstruction, specifying products that can be reused, remanufactured, or otherwise remain in circulation at their highest use for as long as possible. So some great resources to look at here from the AIA is a report called Buildings That Last, designed for adaptability, deconstruction, and reuse. Then anything related to the Ellen MacArthur circularity, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is really one of the preeminent sources on that topic. So they have a ton of resources available as well. So within each of those buckets or impact areas, the 5 impact areas that we just went through, we have in the framework sub-buckets that address not only product-specific impact, but the company-wide impacts throughout a material's whole life cycle. So the framework gives us the mechanism or the ability to consider not only the substances that are present in the product when it's installed, for instance, in the use phase, but all those that are used in the manufacturing process or released in the eventual disposal of the product. In terms of social health and equity, we're not just looking at, the working conditions on the job site, but upstream, up the value chain, throughout that supply chain, and the communities where where raw materials are extracted, where products are manufactured. These are also very important to consider as well. So within each of those 18 sub-buckets, the next tier of this framework is one that we affectionately call the TACO spectrum. So TACO is an acronym that stands for Transparency, Assessment, Commitment, and Optimization. And so transparency, I saw this in the barriers at the beginning of our conversation, just lack of transparency. We're getting more and more to the place, and I suppose it depends a bit on the product category, but for many building materials, transparency and providing transparency into the embodied carbon, the chemical contents, this is just kind of becoming table stakes, the cost of doing business, right? We, as designers and specifiers and owners who are purchasing products, we want to know what's in the product. We want to understand what the impacts are. It's becoming more standard that transparency is just expected. And frankly, that's really this should kind of be reversed, because transparency, I think of as that's the baseline for entry into this conversation. And something to point out too is that what's helpful about the framework is to understand that we are looking at holistic impacts. We're not just looking at, one area. you may have transparency in one area and not in another. And so the framework kind of provides an opportunity for both as you're looking for optimized products, but also provides a bit of a roadmap for, hey, going back here, maybe we have, transparency into the substances contained in our product, but do we have transparency into the ecosystem impacts or the social health and equity impacts, right? And same to consider as you're vetting products. The next level here is assessment. So oftentimes this kind of goes hand in hand with transparency. So for instance, when we talk about VOCs, if you've done VOC testing, you have also inherently done the assessment associated with it. So you've also evaluated whether or not the VOC content or VOC emissions are within the range of what's acceptable for CDPH standards, for instance. Commitment is more along the lines of making a commitment to net zero by X date, or committing to be zero waste to landfill, right? It indicates the intention or meaningful plans for improvements in a given area. And then optimization just demonstrates achievement of an existing benchmark. And so again, like I mentioned, a product could be totally optimized for human health, and have no transparency whatsoever on climate health or ecosystem health, right? So this is where it's really helpful to look at where are you seeing a product achieving certain benchmarks, and then if it is great, if you're selecting a product because it's red list free, it's optimized for human health in some ways. Can you ask about, is there a take back program? What's your extended producer responsibility policy? Is there infrastructure in place to return that product at the end of its life, for instance? So if we zoom out and look at all of the different factors and considerations in the CMF, this is the common language. This is the high level view across all of these 5 impact areas, 600 different factors, over 100 different standards. This is really what we mean when we say this is the common language. It gives us a consistent common way to talk about product sustainability in a day and age where sustainability is a very loaded term. Greenwashing and green hushing are both rampant. And we really need to be a lot more specific when we say a product or a building or anything is sustainable. And so this gives us a way to apply that level of specificity. And I know that I see a question about kind of where is the future expansion. So right now, primarily we're looking at US-based standards, but there is an intent to incorporate more international standards. We are talking with the Australian Green Building Council, with BREEAM and other international organizations. So there's absolutely an intent for this to not just be only a North American based framework. So eventually we hope the CMF, we hope this common language will be one that just gets used every day to make product decisions, but you might not even know it's there. Our vision is a world where sustainability data is available wherever decisions are being made. And when that becomes the case, we'll start to see a proliferation of multi-attribute optimized products, simplified decision making, a clear ROI for manufacturers who are having positive impacts, and ultimately a truly regenerative materials economy, one that leaves the planet and people better off. Eventually, with continued adoption of the CMF, it'll be possible to set reliable benchmarks and tracking for a given product category across the entire industry. But it's important to note that it is not the role of the CMF or of Mindful Materials to establish any of these metrics, but without consistent reporting and data collection across product categories, this type of benchmarking just wouldn't be possible. And so having a common language in the CMF is foundational for us to get to this regenerative materials economy, but there's more than that that needs to happen to see this work be successful. So we just spent a bit of time talking about this kind of common language. The next piece of this is a strong, clear market signal, what we call the aligned ask. So in 2023, the inaugural forum groups for mindful materials were launched, and these groups represented 40 leading owner, AEC, and manufacturer organizations who really are at the cutting edge of the industry when it comes to material standards and requirements, specification criteria, and investing in and producing optimized products. And so the forums offer participants a neutral, pre-competitive space to kind of navigate and solve some shared challenges to help to accelerate meaningful action by others in the industry. And so the challenges being some that I've already discussed, and I'll dive into some of the others in a moment. But today we have over 90 organizations who have committed both time and money to supporting this collective industry-wide effort. And you can see those organizations as well as our industry partners represented here. The first year of the forum's work in 2023 was really around alignment, just getting all the key stakeholders with significant purchasing, specifying, and manufacturing power together to try to build this alignment. And so the outcome of our first year's forum's work was agreement that the industry needs a connected data ecosystem to be able to scale adoption of sustainable materials. And I just covered the 650 different, factors in the common materials framework. We're not going to be able to get there trying to, bite off all of this at once. So we need to kind of prioritize a subset of priority data points and certifications to make this work more manageable. And as we're doing this, we need to continue sending a consistent and clear market signal so that we can start to see the market starting to respond with these certifications and digitization of this information. So this year we've established 3 working groups. Each has unique task forces dedicated to advancing specific parts of this broader work. So this is very not entirely hot off the press, but much newer updates. We did publish in March a strategic plan outlining the work of our forums for this year, and it goes into each of these working groups and task forces in much greater detail. And I'm happy to share the link to that for you all as well. So let's talk about then the third foundational building block to seeing this work be successful. That's that connected data ecosystem. So in order for product sustainability data to appear consistently in a variety of end user workflow tools and software platforms, there needs to be consistency in how that data is structured, organized, and reconciled to align with the common materials framework. And there also needs to be the ability for that data to flow between platforms. Imagine being able to see a product's holistic life cycle impacts displayed right alongside information on colorway, durability, cost. This is the future that we're trying to build towards. So you may assume that data kind of flows from manufacturers to certifying bodies and into the tools and platforms that we utilize on a daily basis as designers. Unfortunately, the current state of product data is fragmented, disconnected, and in many times static, meaning that it lives in a static PDF and all the specific data points kind of contained within that certification can't be extracted or connected into a larger data set. So and a good example being able to pull out the global warming potential for a product from an EPD. This is probably the best that we're doing with a specific data point within any specific certification in the industry. How can we do that for all of the other data points that are contained within all of these certifications we reference on a daily basis? So product sustainability data is managed in a variety of places, and only a fraction of information passes on from one of these places to the next, if it does at all. So our role, Mindful Materials' role, is really a complete shift away from the public database that we've been in the past. As a neutral nonprofit entity, our focus is on improving the quality and completeness of data available across the building product ecosystem. So to do this, we work to facilitate connections and guide collaboration between stakeholders and partners to really identify and understand industry gaps and drive advocacy for more data accessibility, completeness, and quality. I mentioned those over 600 data points referenced in the CMF. So to take a more focused approach to this connected data ecosystem, We, with the help of all of our forum participants, started by identifying the top priority data points to start with. So these are a combination of data points that are already required by many leading owners, as well as data that is already required to be reported under the leading North American green building rating systems like LEED. So comparing these data points and overlaying the data factors that are actionable, available, and relevant, we were able to identify 50 factors that we would focus on first. We really like alliteration, if you didn't notice that. Um, so these are the first factors that were identified. They represent the most needed information, the questions that manufacturers often already have the answers to, and in many cases, this is data that's already publicly available. It just needed to be connected and accessible within our daily workflow. So the question I get asked the most often is, how can I use the CMF in practice today? The good news is, while we don't have this fully realized connected data ecosystem yet, there are a number of different platforms that you can access that serve as a stepping stone to that future scenario. And we've been announcing more and more tech partners who are adopting and integrating the CMF every couple of weeks, it seems, lately. So we do have our Common Materials Framework Airtable tool. This is one that is separate from the product database, but just simply a tool that you can use to navigate through the structure of the Common Materials Framework and also to view which certifications address which impact areas and which specific factors. So this is available through the Mindful Materials Collaboration Hub. I'll share the link to sign up for that as well. And again, this just helps you kind of navigate the framework itself. It doesn't connect to any specific product data. It's just a tool to navigate the CMF and certifications, but not related to specific products. So if you want to search for products, the first place I'll share is Ecomedes product portal, or Mindful Materials product portal powered by Ecomedes. This was really the first platform that enabled you to search for materials by impact using the 5 buckets of the CMF. When you visit portal.mindfulmaterials.com, you can navigate here. Once you start to select one of the impact areas, you'll see additional drop downs that'll let you choose the sub bucket and the specific like taco levels that you want to filter to. Ecomedes' main product portal has now also adopted the Common Materials Framework, so this is a relatively new update. Ecomedes also manages portals for a number of other manufacturers, and they also now have the option to integrate the Common Materials Framework as well. So if you're using Ecomedes, if you're a manufacturer using their platform, and you don't already have the CMF search functionality on your portal, that's something that you can ask for. We also have a partnership with Building Ease. Again, similar here, the 2 impact areas that are built out on Building Ease are human health and climate health, but this is a nice way to see you can actually start to get much more specific in your product search. Instead of just looking for, I want something with an HPD, you can say, I'm looking for HPDs that are third-party verified and disclosed to 100 parts per million. That's a much more specific and smaller subset of results that you'll find when you apply that level of detail in your search. Material Bank is another platform that integrates the Common Materials Framework. When you are searching and sampling for materials, you can actually look at climate health, human health, and social equity as 3 filter criteria, and use that as a way to kind of start your product search as well. And then I don't have a slide for them yet, but we have or will imminently be releasing an update on our partnership with ACE Lab, which is another workflow tool, material selection tool for the AEC industry that is also incorporated in the Common Materials Framework. So as I noted in one of the earlier slides, the impacts of the built environment are vast, global, and systemic. And what we're aiming to do with Mindful Materials is nothing short of market transformation, which is something that everyone plays a role in. And Mindful Materials exists precisely because drastically reducing the impact of building materials at the speed and the scale required of us is impossible for anyone to do alone. Our only shot is working together. So, what can you do today? It depends on your role in the industry, but there's a number of ways that you can get involved. First off, regardless of what seat you sit in, familiarize yourself with the CMF. There is a CMF reference guide. I saw a question about the list of terms. I'll drop a link in the chat for that. We have a number of short videos that explain the common materials framework that are nice little bite-sized education. Share this with your teams. Familiarize yourself and your project teams with the CMF. Ask for product sustainability information. If you're someone who's reaching out to manufacturers asking for EPDs and HPDs, right? Ask for that to be given in a digitized format and note your alignment with the common materials framework. For manufacturers, and again, I saw someone that's working on product development. Use the CMF as a roadmap. Use it as a tool to help you understand what areas are you already providing disclosure or potentially optimization in, and what areas have you maybe not thought about or not done supplier outreach yet. Again, just asking for information aligned with the CMF, using the structure, using the framework to help inform your decisions, set a baseline for your next project for a given material type, right? Require transparency for all of the finished materials you select, for instance. There's a number of ways that you can incorporate this into your work, and Mindful Materials also has started recently hosting office hours that we do monthly for our members. And that's a great place too if you want to join and ask more questions about what does this look like in application, talk with others who are doing this work. We also have engagement groups for architects and designers as well as manufacturers that meet monthly and talk about these topics together. So I really, regardless of what your specific role is in the built environment, there are tons of opportunities to align your own work with these broader efforts to make holistically sustainable materials the norm and not the option. So I invite you all to join us by visiting mindfulmaterials.com to learn more about how you can get engaged. And with that, I will stop sharing here and see what questions we have in the Q&A here.
Yeah, I think we've got one here from Teresa. Not sure if we want to dive right in.
Yes, so I see. How can we better support the aligned ask when designers dialogue with manufacturers? Great question. So we do have right now on our website, I believe we have some resource language. This is also part of a toolkit that we're going to be releasing later this fall that essentially will be just template endorsement language that you can append to your communication saying, if you're asking for HPDs or declare labels, for instance, on a project, just including a note, hey, maybe your firm is a signatory to the AIA Materials Pledge. That's a great place to start too. But noting we're in support of this broader industry effort to standardize the common materials framework, and you can learn more about that here. So just again, as simple as that, directing folks to the CMF reference guide. And we will, again, be working on a whole host of updated resources that we'll be sharing with the industry, planned for release at Greenbuild this year, so in November. Is there currently an effort to endorse the CMF in the EU and or Latin America? So I think I maybe saw someone on the call who has been a huge champion of the CMF and mindful materials in Latin America. We've had over historically, yes, Victor. I don't know if Victor is able to speak, if he's not a panelist or not, but we have partners in a number of international locations who have been really just huge champions in their work and in the roles that they play in the industry. And there was, I think last year, the year before, a big road show across a number of Latin American countries, just giving this same or very similar presentation, raising awareness about the common materials framework. And so I don't know if Victor is, sorry to call you out, but if he wants to say anything, he's our Latin American champion on the call.
If not, that's fine too. Victor, we can if you have anything to add, would love to have your 2 cents added to the summary email. So I may be in touch.
Oh, yes, that would be perfect. Are we planning to partner with any new clients this year? Okay, so great question. And I would clarify that in terms of partnerships, clients, that sort of thing. So Mindful Materials, we are now 10, last year we celebrated our 10-year anniversary. And this really started as a grassroots kind of volunteer industry effort. Credit to HKS, whose office kind of birthed the whole concept of mindful materials and what was at the time like a shared spreadsheet. And so we've been through this really interesting journey over the past decade, everywhere from being the first kind of aggregator of sustainability certifications with our original product library that was in partnership with Origin and Giga. And then and then since then, at the time, there were also like stickers on binders. And so we've come this long way in understanding there isn't really going to be as much as we would love to be, and for some time tried to be like the one central place that everyone's going to go. There's always going to be a number of different tools and platforms that offer different values and benefits and user interfaces. And so for us, we really felt it's the most important to have consistent, quality, connected data that's available wherever you're working, right? And so maybe you're not using Ecomedes or Building Ease, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have access to the information, the sustainability information to make a better decision, right? And so our focus has really shifted. And 2 years ago, we got our 501c3 nonprofit status. And so we don't have any clients, so to speak, but our tech partners like Ecomedes, Building Ease, Material Bank, Ace Lab, Sustainable Minds is another one that I didn't mention there. Those are going to continue to expand, and it's our goal to see the common materials framework everywhere. And I mean, longer term, we're also trying to work with LEED, WELL, Living Building Challenge to enable the ability and AIA materials pledge when that ultimately kind of moves to the ADX platform. Ultimately, we want to see the ability to just push reporting directly from whatever tools you're working in or through your own databases into those green building rating systems and standards directly. So the goal is to absolutely like streamline this communication, and we certainly do want to partner with any platform, any tool that wants to adopt or integrate the common materials framework. So we are a very small and nimble team, and the forums are really the forum for where that kind of collaboration and coordination takes place. So if there are other organizations that are interested in participating in that, the opportunity is there. But we are still very much building, what does like a licensing agreement, or what does right now, you'll see the tech partners are kind of incorporating the common materials framework in different levels of depth. And so that is something that's still in development. Like, what does it look like to integrate the CMF? And we will likely be kind of setting standards and criteria and like minimum levels of integration for that in the future. But the door is totally open now, and we would love to engage with others to, see the CMF adopted as far and wide as possible.
Amazing. Okay. I'll just give the participants another few minutes to ask any questions. Um, If none pop up in the chat, do very much encourage you guys to reach out. Again, the Supply Chain School is here to support. Laurel is here to support. You'll be getting information in an email from myself shortly, and that. Thank you, Laurel. That's great. And we'll also share our details in the email. So if you do have any questions, if you wake up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat thinking I didn't ask this question during the webinar, oh my gosh, very much encourage you to reach out and have a conversation with us. Like I said, this recording will be put on the Supply Chain School's resource library, so feel free to go back and have a look. Share with your colleagues. Would encourage the the spreading of this of the common materials framework. It's a wonderful resource, wonderful tool, and can't wait to see what's next. So if there are no other questions, I think we'll leave it there, and I'll just say thank you guys so much for joining, and thank you, Laurel, for a great presentation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye everyone.